Sony CFS-9000, replacing the tape mechanism belts. Here are the belts here. There's the larger one which goes around both the capstans and around the motor, and then the smaller one which drives the mechanism. You'll see that in the video anyway. So that's that. First thing you do is obviously remove the battery cover. Take all the screws out. There's 2 screws underneath. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 screws on the back. Right, and then remove the back cover like that. Once you've done that, just trying to get it in shot. Turn it around. Probably side on be easier. I think it's in shot, yeah. Using a screwdriver, remove the 2 screws either side that hold the front faceplate on. And on the other side as well. The other 2 screws, and then the faceplate comes off. So let's pull that forward. Oops. Back like that. There we go. Is that in shot? That's in shot. So just remove take the front door off as well. Front door lifts off, cassette door, and then pull towards you. Actually, probably easier just to lift it upright. Oops. Solder tabs are getting caught on the towel. This should lift straight off now. You may need to lever it slightly, and then the front door comes off. So what we do now is we bring it back forward again, so it's upright, and then tilt it back slightly, and then move the front cover out of the way, like so. Next thing we do is, let's make sure I've got that in shot. Angle that down slightly. It's about right, I think. Maybe a bit more. That's about right. Next thing we do is lift the white lever, and the cassette door comes forward, and what we do now is remove the 4 screws that hold the cassette mechanism to the frame. 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom, the small silver coloured screws. Right. Put them to one side. Close the door again. Now this whole mechanism should lift out, pulls forward like that, and then just make sure that any wires, there's little tabs here to keep the wires neat. You may need to release those tabs on the circuit board, so that way you can pull it forward without pulling on the wires. And then what I generally do is just lay it down flat. There's another pull tab down here. Just pull it towards yourself, and then that allows the other wires to loosen out, and that way you can get access to the mechanism. So that's showing up in video. Great. Now there's 3 screws, 1, 2 and 3, hold the back plate on. We're going to lift that off to remove the old belts, but what I generally have to do is these wires have to be loosened to get this plate off, so otherwise they get in the way. So I've already been into this mechanism, so I'm just going to remove the fiberglass tape that I put here, which I can reuse again, put it to one side, and you'll see these wires here. Just you may need to loosen these 2 plates here, these metal plates or brackets. I use a flat blade screwdriver just to lift them slightly so I can get the wires out. So just bend them up slightly, or you can just get them under with a screwdriver, that way you can get them out yourself. So I just tend to bend them up a little bit. And this one here's got a few more wires, so be careful not to kink them or snap the wires. There we go. So these two little brackets here, I've bent them upwards so I can get these wires out. So they're on that side. And this little fella here, get all these wires out as well. I'm using a flat blade screwdriver, but it's got like a groove in the middle of it, and it's great for hooking wires out. I mean, you don't have to use that, but it just makes it easier for me. So now they're lifted out. Just be careful not to move it around too much, because what happens is this solder connections might snap off. So, I mean, if you want to be careful, you could always take detailed photos of everything first. That way, if any of the wires do come off, you know where they go. And then this last one in the center here, just lift those wires underneath, from underneath that little tab. That way all the wires, now see all the wires are all lifting out. So that's done, so now all the wires are free. Generally what you have to do here is there's a spring here, there's a little spring here, this is for the record mechanism. I generally take that off, so this little screwdriver comes in handy for that as well. Just let that sit like that. That way when you remove the plate you're not pulling on this spring that's just here. And that's pretty much it. Now this one, the auto stopped working. It was working before, and when I put it back together it wouldn't auto stop. And after taking it apart I can see why. There's 3 wires that run to the circuit board, which has the sensor and has the photo sensor and has the LED. See what's happened here is one of the wires is actually broken off. Excuse me. So I'm going to have to re-solder that to that board and probably reflow these 3 wires. And that's why the auto stopped working. I'll do that later. That's not important at the moment. And what basically happens is when it gets to the end of the tape, it doesn't auto stop. So it's an easy fix for that one. So just remove these screws. This one here. 2 and 3. So there's 1 on that side and 2 next to the motor. And if we lift this board now, lift this back plate I should say, alright, and just make sure the wires are out of the road. Just very gently move everything out of the way. I tend to lift these towards the top, that way you can lift it out of the road. And then the connection, this was playing fine, but auto reverse wouldn't work and music search wouldn't work properly. But I can see the belt is actually still connected, but it's starting to lose its elasticity. So I'm just going to remove that now from the motor side, and we can actually lift that off. This old belt is just starting to go hard, and so is the other belt as well. So that's the difference in the old one and the new one. And then that's the one that goes around the two capstans. They're the 2 old ones, and there's the 2 new ones. So we'll put them to one side so we don't mix them up. The other thing we check for is, I'll try and zoom in while we've got the back off. If you put it back together and you find that it won't rewind and fast forward, there is a lever inside here that moves this gear back and forth. This one here, with my finger, I'll have to zoom it in maybe, you might be able to see it. There's a gear that moves back and forth. If you have any questions, just send me a message and I can send you a close-up photo of that. Basically, this should move freely back and forth like it is now. If it's not, the grease has dried up and needs to be cleaned off. There's also a retaining spring that goes across that pulls this gear this way for rewind. That gear sometimes falls off as well. This one's intact, so it doesn't need to be done. Also, once the belts are put back in, and you find when you press play, and the tape mechanism will basically engage the heads and drop down, engage the heads and drop down and move up and down like that. There's a couple of metal levers on the inside where the cassette goes, behind the black cassette cover inside the cassette mechanism. There's a couple of spots that need oiling. If you have that issue, send me a message and I'll send you photos of what to oil. It's only a couple of spots. It happens sometimes, it sometimes doesn't. So this one wasn't doing it. I think it all depends where environment they've been under. This one's actually in really good condition. It's works really well. So anyway, so what we do now is we need to fit the new belts. So that old belt there, that's a lot thinner than the new belt. So I've got 2 different belts here. Yeah, so I'll try this one. This one's 2mm thick. I'm just wondering if it's too thick, but we'll see. I've used 2mm thick square belts before and they've been fine. This might be a little bit too thick actually. I may have to get, I've got another one there. It might not go into the slot properly actually. Yeah, alright, that's not going to go in I don't think. Let's just see, it might. Yeah, it might be a little bit too... Anyway, you've got to put the belt around the capstan pulley on this side, and then what you have to do here is you have to put it around that right capstan pulley all the way around, and then it feeds through the center, comes around that, and then goes over the top of the left capstan. So I'm just feeding it now. So that should go around like that. That should go around. I put it around this post here, and then you put the belt around that pulley like that. So if it doesn't go in the right spot, you might need to use, yes, that's popped off. I'm thinking these belts might be a bit too big, but I've got another belt there. Just got to get this belt out. This belt might be a little bit too thick. So let's get that belt out of there. I've got another belt, just might be a second, go grab it. They probably need to be about 1.5mm thick. This is the other one I received. As you can see, it's the same diameter, but it's thinner. Go with the thinner one. These thicker ones are a little bit too thick, but that's okay. They could be used for something else. So this is the belt kit I got from the guy in Italy. Where is it? There, it's in the shop there. So the larger belt's a little bit thinner than the other one, and yeah, that's actually accurate. So the first thing we do is we put this larger belt, goes around the pulley, goes around the capstan pulley, completely like that, and then it feeds around the other pulley. It goes on a lot easier. So you can probably see that hopefully. Just going to lift that out the road, there we go. So we've got, so the belt has gone around this pulley here, and then over the top of that pulley there, and then around this plastic mount just to keep it tight, and then you should be able to move this one and the other one moves as well. I'll just zoom in on that so you can see. Try and get all the wires out of the road. I'll just zoom in on that now. Just that. Zoom out slightly. About there we go. So you can see when I move that capstan pulley, the other one moves. So it's gone around, completely around that one, around the top of that one, and back around here. This keeps it tight. So what we need to do now is put the motor plate back on. And this is where the fun job is. I've done it a few times, hopefully it goes the first time now. But what you want to do is you want to roughly position it where it's got to go. And then I've got a special tool that I made in my little toolkit. Basically like a bit of wire with a hook on it, and that little fella is right here. That's the one I used. This is my little tool to, oops, there we go. And what it is it's just a bit of wire with a hook on the end of it and a little loop to move it. This is also very handy. I actually originally made this for some of the AL Walkmans that I restored, and I was able to use this to get behind the pinch roller and pop the pinch roller pin out. So it was actually quite a useful tool, and I've used it on a couple of other boom boxes as well. So anyway, you can use a screwdriver with a hook on the end of it. I mean, you don't have to have something like this. It doesn't really matter. So what I'm basically doing is I'm using this, and I'm hooking the belt as shown. So I've actually got the little tool hooking around the belt, pulling it away from the pole and then gently putting it around the motor pulley. I mean, that's probably pretty hard to video, but you get the idea. So what I need to do now is get low down and keep that tight, and then bring that around. Now it's come off. So you've got to be careful. It takes a few goes to get it to work. So that's come off now. So let's have another go. There's probably a better process to do this, but unfortunately this is the only way I do it. Normally after a couple of goes I get it. So put that back on there again. Back on this pulley here. Back on there again, so we're in the right spot. Yep. Just check it to make sure they're both on properly. So that's on. Even if the belt's twisted, it doesn't matter, because once you spin it, it'll actually clear. It'll self-right itself, so it's not a big deal. So the idea is to try and get this as low as possible and get the wires out of the way. So just get to very gently move everything into position. So you're just about to drop it down, so all the wires are out of the way. Hold the motor here, and then I've got to very carefully lift this off and get it over the motor pulley, and it come off again. Right, okay. I'm just going to pause it while I do attach it, and then we'll resume.